each story that we read, it's based upon who's telling it to us. And our storyteller, our narrator in Blue Marlin is 12 years old, 13 years old. And so she just gets right to it. She's just like this. I mean, she has a definite direct sort of style of address, and could be a very difficult child to have, I think, but she's very amusing and nosy and interested in everything. And she's particularly interested in what's been going on in her own family. And why they're taking the trip, which is actually, this is Blue Marlin. That's the name of the motel where they stay in the trip. And I got to tell you, I'll tell you right up front, I mean, this trip, I write about this in the end of this book, but this trip is this novel is based very closely on an actual trip that I took in 1958 to Key West, Florida with my parents. And it was a kind of thing, my father had been recovering from a nervous breakdown for 6 months. My mother, same thing. They were in different hospitals. Daddy in Connecticut, Mama at UVA. And I had been sent to live with various cousins, and that's a trip in itself. So anyway, then when it was time for the family to get back together, my father's psychiatrist, who was a very good doctor, prescribed not only lithium, the new thing, but also a geographical cure. And the geographical cure was a big trip that the whole family would go on, and it would sort of bring us together under brand new circumstances, and we'd see what happened. And that's what we did. We literally did that. And so they were not getting along. I never knew the source of the trouble, but they were not getting along really well in the beginning. In fact, they were not speaking. They were smoking cigarettes, in the interior of this big fishtail Buick that were driving down the entire East Coast, stopping at those little tourist cottages, and anyway, it was not going well until we got to Key West. Then we checked into the Blue Marlin, where stuff really started to happen, because the only other people in the Blue Marlin were the cast and crew of a movie that was being filmed there. And so, like 2 doors down from us was Tony Curtis. And we had Cary Grant, and we had all these other very interesting people. And my mama and I, who lived on movie magazines. And every time the movie changed, once a week in Grundy, Virginia, we were there, in our favorite seats. Well, she picked up, and I was thrilled. And I was sworn that I could not bother the stars. And finally we said to Dad, we said, well, who did you tell them we are? And he just drew himself up and he said, an American family. And that was the start of everything getting better. But a lot of stuff happened. A lot of stuff always happens. So that's basically the plot. It's a fictionalized version of that trip. I upped the ante in this. I have it that the parents had an affair, which mine parents never did. I mean, as far as I know, they had just been through a lot and having
that's just where the storytelling took you.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's what started this book. And we went to Key West because my father had been stationed there in the Navy on a destroyer and going in and out of Key West. And so he loved it. That's why he picked it. And that's the plot of Operation Petticoat, the movie, the horrible movie, but it's so fun that was being made. It's, it's a destroyer that's been painted pink because they run out of paint and this and that. And, but anyway, I have to say, sometimes I'm accused of being maybe a dark writer with some of it, because I write some serious stuff. And this is very serious stuff, but it's happy too. I mean, it's happy too. This child is hilarious, and some of the people in the book are. And so I think it's a good book to read right now during this time of pandemic, because it's, and I've also found in my own life as well as my writing that so often if I can have a little humor, I can deal with things that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. It's like, it's like whistling past the graveyard And so it's not that this is not a serious book, but I think it's kind of fun. So I would welcome anybody to come along.
I agree. I thought it was delightful. Loved it. And I just think all great Southern literature has a scene in the Piggly Wiggly, you know? It's just the way it works.
Well, but you know, my family owned the Piggly Wiggly.
Oh, great.
I mean, they really did. Not my daddy, he owned the dime store, but my cousins, the Piggly Wiggly. And now, actually, they own some grocery stores in Chattanooga, which is Food City. Do you know those new Food City stores? That's my cousins. Yeah. So, yeah. Very small world. Very small world.
Linda, do we have questions from the folks for Lee?
Well, if I don't right now, if you all will put something in chat. Also, Lee, did you want to do a reading?
Oh, yeah, let me do. Yeah, I would love that. Let me do that.
Talk about it.
Okay, here we go. This is going to be, I'm sorry, this is not a very exciting cocktail.
You need an umbrella in it.
A reading in a bottle, no. But okay, this is the voice of the child who's telling us, and this is how it begins. And so it's an introduction to her and then to her mama. In 1958, when my father had his famous affair with Carol Bard, I knew it before anybody. I don't know how long he'd been having the affair before I found out about it, or to be exact, before I realized it, before it came over me. One day, I was writing my book all over town the way I always did. And the next day, I was riding my bike all over town, knowing it. And this knowledge gave me an extra depth. And it gave a heightened dimension and color to everything. Before, I'd been just any old 13-year-old girl on a bike. Now, I was a girl whose father was having an affair. A tragic girl, a dramatic girl, a girl with a burning secret. Everything was different. All my conversations, especially my conversations with my mother, became almost electrical, charged with hidden import, pregnant with meaning in the lingo of the love magazines and movie magazines she was constantly reading. Well, okay, we were constantly reading. For my mother loved the lives of the stars above all else. She hated regular newspapers. She hated facts. She hated club meetings, housework, politics, business, and her mother-in-law. She was not civic. She adored shopping, friends, cooking, gardening, dancing, children and babies and kittens, all little helpless things, actually, and my father. Especially she adored my father. Mama's favorite word was sweet. She cried the drop of a hat and kept a clump of pink Kleenex tucked into her bosom at all times, just in case. She called people poor souls. Some people said Mama looked like Marilyn Monroe, but I didn't think so. Mama was bigger, blonder, paler, softer, with a sort of inflatable celluloid prettiness. She looked like a great big baby doll. People also said I took after Mama, but this wasn't true either, or at least not yet. And I didn't want it to become true, at least not entirely, as I feared that taking after her too much might eventually damn me into lying down a lot of the time, which looked pretty boring. On the other hand, I was simply dying to get my period, grow breasts, turn into a sex pot, and do as much damage as Mama, which had been considerable. She had broken every heart in Charleston and had a charm bracelet made out of fraternity pins to prove it. So that gives you a good, a good example of the two. And let me read just a little bit from the end, because this is something that really did happen. This is just a little bit from the end. I write a little essay about writing fiction and nonfiction and the differences and so on at the end. Okay, this is what happened in the Blue Marlin Motel every night at 7 p.m. and which is what really happened. Mama and I found out that Tony Curtis would call Janet Leigh on the telephone, and there was only one public telephone. It was in the lobby. You didn't have phones, you didn't have phones in your room then. So anyway, we found out where the phone was, and there was a place where we could sit, and we would sit there with the newspaper like this so we could hear every word he was saying to her. And here's what happened, okay? Every night at 7 p.m., and this is true, and also fiction in the book. Every night at 7 p.m., Mama and I seated ourselves on a rattan love seat in the lobby of the Blue Marlin, pretending to read newspapers while we eavesdropped on Tony Curtis's daily call from the public telephone to Janet Leigh back in Hollywood, which always ended with Tony's words, "God bless you, my darling." We rattle our newspapers emotionally. And so romance returned to everybody, I guess. Certainly to our little family. But and this is kind of about romance and all the sort of American tropes and notions of romance and the movies and everything. This is one of the worst movies ever made in terms of the movie, but it made a lot of money for for its time. And so it came out in 1959.
Yeah, Lee, why don't you talk a little bit about what you wrote on writing nonfiction and fiction based off of the real world, and kind of where you see yourself in this book.
Yeah, I wrote, well, yes, I have an essay, just a short essay at the end, because I think that's a question. I think a lot of times when any of us, any writer or any person who wants to write, a lot of times we do have some kind of material, some kind of experience from our own life that has prompted that. And I've taught so much, and I've talked to so many people, particularly in adult, classes. And they're saying, well, I don't know if I want to write a novel or if it should be nonfiction. Because, creative nonfiction has scenes, and it's very like reading a novel if it's well done. And, it's hard to decide sometimes which it should be. So that is what I'm writing about here. For me, I have found it in my own life, I found it much easier to write fiction, because real life is often, as you know out there, very chaotic. And sometimes it doesn't seem to make sense. And sometimes it doesn't seem to happen in any aesthetic frame that we think would make a good story. It's very difficult sometimes to deal with. And so, whereas that old storytelling trope, beginning, middle, and end, it's very satisfying, the old kind of story. So oftentimes I have found that it's my preference to sometimes use biographical elements, such as I did here, but change them. Also, I upped the ante. I had the parents in my story having an affair, which never happened in my own parents' life. They had just gone through some troubles of their own. Mental illness was so very hard to diagnose and treat in those days, and so they'd been separated, because of illnesses, and so that was a whole different thing. But I found the theme of romance, the theme I wanted to deal with, because that's the movies. The movies give romance to American life. That's been the greatest source of romance in America forever, particularly in those earlier days. And so I wanted to, so you change things. You often up the ante. Sometimes you change the order of events. Oftentimes you will change certain characters, but there is much fiction does have an autobiographical element. You got to get your people from somewhere. You got to get your ideas from somewhere, and here's life. It's just ready to give it to us. So it's always a question. I also wrote a memoir named Dime Store. Says a lot of it happens in Daddy's Dime Store, and in that I was absolutely scrupulous to not make up a thing. And it was I wanted to get it down, just like you want to take pictures of everybody you love, but it wasn't nearly as fun, as fun as it is to make stuff up. So it's a difference. It's a call. It's a judgment call for everybody.
one of the things that I really saw in the book was for Jenny, this was about, growing up, becoming an adult, meeting real life. And what life lessons do you see her in the book learning? There seems to be a lot of things that open her eyes.
Yes. Well, I think this story, Blue Marlin, this little book, really fits into that old category of the initiation story. We call it, we professors, or the coming of age story. It is when a young person goes through, sometimes it's associated with a trip. It's often associated with a trip because that's where we are introduced to new people, new elements, things that may challenge our assumptions, right? So a lot of times it's that. But anyway, that's what this is. In fact, I'm in Maine, as we said. I'm in a little village. We're doing a community read and writing program with this book, and I am as a writing prompt. Everybody, and everybody is urged to think of a trip that they took, because we've all taken such trips or had experiences that were new experiences where things happened that were new for us, and they often made us grow up a little bit or look at the world in a new way. Whether it was something like, the first time you killed a deer on a hunting trip, or just whatever it is. So that's what they're writing up here this week in Maine, is an initiation story or coming of age story. And I think this is a particularly good time for people to be reading and writing, because we all have so much emotion going on with what's happening to us, happening in our country, as well as happening with COVID. And I think there's nothing more helpful for us at this point than reading and writing. And I think right now we're all going through a coming of age experience, and all these students, younger people, and so on. I'm really urging them, to write, and to write a whole lot during this time, because this is an unprecedented time, and it's very important. You are very important. And reading and writing is a way for everybody's story to get told. And now in America, I think we're newly aware of all the stories that have to be told, and how much we want to hear them, and we want to facilitate their being written, and so on. So I think literature and writing are more important than ever before, particularly in this unprecedented time. So that's my deal. I'm selling that all over town.
Yeah. So we're getting some questions.
Yeah.
Someone asked how you and Jenny are alike, as when you were a
Jenny and I are pretty much alike. Because she's a really obnoxious little child. She's very nosy. It's in a way, it's almost the stereotypical only child. She'll try anything. She'll poke her nose into anything. She thinks everything is her business. Nobody's told her no enough. So I would say that the little character, I love to write from that point of view. But I know I was a handful. So, but that's another way in which it is sort of autobiographical. And she's always been taking notes on people and saying, I will use these things later in my novels, so.
Okay, so I'm trying to get up to these other questions here. We have.
Thank you for introducing.
There we go.
To the book that was featured last time. And what was that?
The last author we had?
Yeah.
Susan Meissner was on, and she has two books. That the last year of the war, which is about World War II and internment camp. And then she had one, I think it's Bright as a Star, something close to that. It was about the 1918 pandemic.
Oh, which I will have to, it's MEISSNER, I think I just saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can spell. I mean, you have to spell. But
Yeah,
yeah,
really
I would like to read that one. And as I say, this is the time when everybody out
It's
there looking
bright as heaven. Somebody
stories.
remembered for me.
Yeah.
So here's a question. An obvious fan of yours says, I love knowing about how intentional you were with the portrayal of the mother in Blue Marlin. I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Grace's mother in Saving Grace. Who or what were the influence on the mother's development in that story? I also picked up on some Edna from The Awakening.
Oh, I love The Awakening. I have taught that novel. This is, of course, by Kate Chopin, one of the great classics. And I've taught that quite a lot. But she is mentioning a novel that I wrote, Saving Grace, which again, I'm pretty curious, kind of like the little girl in the story, and I got very interested in serpent handling believers, and was interviewing a lot of women who are serpent handling believers, and a few of them who were the ministers. I'm holding up the serpents. I can't talk about doing this. So anyway, this is very much a Eastern Tennessee thing too, if you know it or not, and also, well, several other places near Chattanooga. But anyway, I got really interested in this, and there is a mother. There's Grace is my daughter. She's my main character there, and she is born into such a family. And so the question is, what do you do? Do you run away? Do you leave? Can you stay? All these. It's a scary family, but in a way, it's also illegal. That makes the family closer than ever. So it's a very interesting thing to write about. And I would have to say that Grace's mother, I don't know, she came right from all those women I interviewed, because I was attending these meetings and talking to people, and she was like a kind of an amalgam of so many of the women that I had interviewed. And no personal relation, but a great privilege to get to know these people who were, as I say, so different from myself.
Okay, I have one person on a little bit different note was talking about her granddaughter is 12 and loves to write, and she would like to know how she could help encourage her, and if The Lost Girls would be a good read for her. She's like on the 9th grade level.
I don't think it would. I mean, I don't think it would. I think this would be fun. I think Blue Marlin would be a fine read for her. The Last Girls is a book that I wrote after I attended. I am really old, all right, and I decided to write The Last Girls, although I'd taken the trip down the Mississippi River, as a college student. Then I went to my 30th Hollins reunion, and we're all there, and we're all saying, who are we now? Who are we, and how this is the journey of a life. It's a woman's journey, and I think it's for older women. I mean, it's for age 30 on, really, because it's about women's lives and the choices we make and so on. And I really do believe women's lives are made with the very different choices from men. I have to say, particularly my generation, because we didn't understand we could do what we wanted so much. So anyway, there's a whole lot of stuff in this book that I think the 13-year-old could find maybe better models for her own, for her own writing. And but boy, there's no better time than right now to do it. And I love to see particularly people that age keeping the kind of journalist and scrap. It's almost like a scrapbook now, where you write and you draw and you pick up weird stuff, flowers or anything, and you stick it in, or things from the newspaper. And it's almost like, to capture the time they're living in right now, I think would be great. And I think maybe this grandmother could get it like an artist, an artist pad, and a whole bunch of, what we used to call magic markers, and spangles and other things, and and just say, "Ooh, let's make a page every day. What are you thinking? What are you doing? What are you seeing?" It's so fun to do that.
There's a lot to write about,
They
right?
can share with each other. Yeah, yeah.
So Ginger said her favorite character is Ivy Rowe. Would you please speak to your inspiration for her story?
Yeah, Ivy Rowe was based on so many of the wonderful women in my own family, such as my Aunt Kate, and other women that I interviewed over a period of many, many, many years in the mountains of Southwest Virginia, where I grew up. And it just became my passion to talk to people, just go talk to people and go back and talk to them. And I had so many, many stories, and I just wanted to write about, I wanted to basically, particularly, write a book that would honor the lives of so many of the women that I had known and loved, and women, as I say, that didn't have any way of being honored in public in the communities and so on, who had not had, the education. But I felt like these were beautiful lives, noble lives. And so that's what that book is about. And so Ivy Rowe is such a woman. Although she loves to read too. She likes that stuff too. She doesn't get a chance to do it too much.
Well, this isn't a question, but a comment to pass on to you. I truly don't think you are a dark writer, as you said, some pin on you. Every story of yours that I have ever read, I've read myself, I've read my family, and especially in family linen. Please know you are a huge part of my college experience as an English major at MTSU, Middle State.
Oh, that is so nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I wondered about the murder of Mason, who is Jenny's uncle, and how that seemed to be the turning point of all that happens, and how her mother. Tell us a little bit without giving it all away.
Okay, well, I won't give it all away. But yes, yes, Jenny's mother has a beloved brother who is always getting in trouble. I mean, I don't know. He's just one of these people. He's always out of money. He's always in trouble. He's always coming around, and she kind of gives him some money. Every time he shows up, it's the bad, the bad penny, I guess, or whatever. But he's adorable, and she loves him. And so, anyway, he's her. The mother loves him. You love him so much when you can't get him to do right sometimes, and so anyway, that's the situation. And there's a point when this whole, the whole family has been out of town, and he is suddenly killed. Mason, in a fight, over some woman or something. And so the issue comes up, well, we have to get together, we have to have the funeral, we have to do this and we have to do that, but nobody can quite find Daddy. So that's all I'll say. The father is somehow missing, and it never would have been noticed had this inconvenient, horrible death, not happened, I think. I think a lot of times, when these things happen, when somebody dies or there's a wreck or something, people are kind of caught short, and people say things and do things that they never would normally, when accident enters, when accident enters a very patterned life, sometimes the pattern cannot, continue. And our Southern lives often are very patterned. Well, I guess anybody's life, middle class lives are very patterned. And so breaking the pattern can be terrifying, of course, to some people, the dissolution of a marriage or the whatever it happens to be, terrifying.
So Jacqueline asks, are there any experiences or themes that you find yourself returning to over and over again?
Well, I have to say, I really do. I guess, I mean, starting with Fair and Tender Ladies, the book about, about the elder women in the mountains, I really have written a whole lot about women's lives because that's what I know, and I've been a reporter. I've had a chance to ask people all kinds of personal questions, that I would never have gotten to if I weren't a reporter. And I've done a whole lot of oral history work, and I'm just interested, and I'm particularly interested in women's lives, which for so long were not played out in the public arena, not played out, not the kind of lives that could have a big obit, and so on, but were very, they were just on a completely different way. And I've just been so interested in that. And then, of course, more recently, as the possibilities and choices become greater, it becomes, in a certain way, more open, more choices, but hard, very hard to make certain decisions, and hard to be yourself. So, no matter, race, sex, whatever, it's maybe, it's just as hard as it was in another way. I mean, to find out who we are. So that's what I'm always writing about. Now my characters are older because I'm older. Pretty soon, I guess we'll all be in the home. Everything will be said in the home. I don't know. But anyway, I mean, I have had a good time doing it. Very fulfilling time. So.
And Jonathan asks, what have you found are the pros and cons of being a Southerner in the literary world?
You know what? I don't think there are any cons of being a Southerner in the literary world. But I will tell you, I'm a member of the Fellowship of Southern Writers, which is in Chattanooga and was sponsored by the Southern Lit Alliance. And from the time it was started, ages and ages ago, it was really started because it was harder to be a Southern writer in the literary world, because all of publishing was New York. Everything was New York, and it was New England, and so on. And I think, we were, really looked down on Southerners. And I mean, what is that whole thing about whenever that famous psychological test when a whole bunch of people hear someone with a Southern accent and someone without a Southern accent reading the same learned thing, and then they say, okay, which person has the higher IQ, which is the smarter? Well, the one with the Northern accent. And so but I mean, that plays out on a whole lot of levels. And so one of the reasons that the Fellowship of Southern Writers was started initially by Black and white scholars and writers. I mean, it was to get Southerners, and because we all considered that Faulkner was the best, I guess, ever. And, but that's the only writer that anybody in New York had ever heard of. So we were trying to get young people, writing programs, places to write, trying to get good work by new Southern writers, Black and white, old and young, published. And actually, I don't think that's even an issue anymore. It's absolutely not an issue. Although there's always more, to be done. There are, as Linda was showing us, these wonderful kinds of programs where young writers are finding their voices and so on. And of course, I think it was also really true initially in publishing as a whole, as in everything in a whole, that Black voices were harder to be published. And that was one of the aims, and it's still one of the aims of, this organization of writers. So, it's always, we want the new voices. We want to get them out there. And sometimes they need a hand, they need a push. So that's one thing that this has always been about.
Great. Well, I think that's a great way to wrap up. Ray, do you have anything you would like to add?
I just feel honored to be part of this and to be listening to Lee again after chatting with her and you last week, Linda, on WUTC, and just share even more of her story. And it's very inspiring. It's very inspiring.
I feel very, very honored, and I'm so glad to be a part of this program that is taking writing and literature and listening to each other and reading each other to the community. I think it's wonderful. So thank you for the opportunity.
So a few housekeeping things. I did have a question. Someone wants to buy several copies of the book. Where is the easiest place to get it? I don't know who's carrying it in town, or is there a publisher's website? What do you suggest?
Yeah, well, I'm sure somebody's carrying it in town, but the publisher is a North Carolina publisher named Blair, Blair, Blair Publishing. Go to their website. You can order immediately and you'll get it immediately.
Great. And thanks to those who have made a donation. We did have a offering of those who donated $50 or more can receive a signed copy that Lee signed for us of the books. If you gave $100 or more, we have a special labeled nice white wine that goes good with seafood, I'm told, and we picked, and so you can get that. If you haven't picked those up, they're available at our office at Arts Building, which is 301 11th Street. We are in COVID, and Arts Build has the building closed some days. I will be there all day tomorrow. And when you got your email, my cell phone number is on there. I'll be happy. Just let me know when you're coming so I don't miss you if I go to lunch, and I will have those for you. Or if you do want them shipped to you, if you would go back and donate $5 for the book or $15 for both the wine and the book, then that will cover our shipping cost for that. And we would be delighted to send them to you. And I have plenty of copies. If you want a signed copy, you can make a donation to SoLit and get that as well. So thank you for signing those books for us.
Oh, I'm delighted. Thank you.
And Ray, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate
Yes, thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Thank you. And we look forward to having more conversations with you, Linda, and other writers that you bring, even virtually, as today on WUTC, and everything else that you have talked about in this hour that Southern Lit Alliance is doing. So we're here. We look forward to more.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us so much. If you didn't get a chance to hear about Southern Lit, you can hang on and I will tell you more about the programs and do that again, because there are a lot of people who came on after that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. I'm sending a donation.
Oh, you're so kind. Thanks.
Are you kidding? I'm impressed.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks. So for those of you who want to stay on, and if you didn't get a chance to hear about the programs that we're doing, I'm going to screen share and go back. Just wanted to tell you a little bit about Southern Lit Alliance. We've been around since 1952 in a variety of different names and doing a little bit different things in the arts. And then we really started to narrow down our focus on literature specifically, which makes us unique in town. I do want to thank First Horizon. They have been sponsoring our virtual events here since we had to cancel our fundraiser and our literature festival. So we appreciate their financial support tremendously. So our mission, Southern Lit Alliance mission, is to provide engaging literary arts experiences to encourage passionate readers and writers. So we do writing projects and bringing in authors. This is just a list of our programs. You may be familiar with our Southward Literary Festival that we do with the Fellowship of Southern Writers. Also our Young Southern Student Writers Contest. You may not be familiar, I'll tell you about Turn the Page. It's workshops that we're doing with area jails and transitional housing. Our Yahoo Fest is a new literature festival that we started 3 years ago, specifically focused on teens and preteens for that genre, which is really growing. Our Theater Express program is for fourth graders as part of Arts Imagine, and it brings a play based off of a children's book for them so they can read the book and see the play. We do work at the Moccasin Bend Hospital Library, do book drives, and also the lecture series like we did today. So we're serving 7,000 or more adults and children every year. It's a big impact. So a little bit of information about some of these programs. I don't have time to go over them all. The Southward Festival is with the Fellowship of Southern Writers, like Lee, and they do panel discussions, readings, book writings, concerts. Really, it's connecting authors and their fans. We plan to do in April. We did have to cancel that, of course, and so we are going to bring it again in next spring. We're going to be optimistic that we can all get together then. The Young Southern Student Writers Contest is a regional writing contest for grades K through 12. We work with area schools and teachers and have about 7,000 submissions every year. And yes, every single one is read by a professor or graduate student at UTC Department of English. They're just amazing help. And they pick around 400 for a special merit award, and we have a ceremony to give them that. We couldn't do it in person in April as planned, but we're going to be going to the schools when they open in the fall. So the kids get the opportunity to get their medal and get some, it's really some recognition for that. So a little more about Turn the Page. These are groups of about 10 people in Hamilton County Jail, Silverdale Detention Facility, Moccasin Bend Mental Hospital, and Love's Arms, which is a transitional housing for women who've been sexually trafficked. And they're led by a facilitator who holds either a master's degree in English or creative writing. And they do journaling, they read poems and discuss them, do some creative writing, and the impact has been tremendous. They write back to us and tell how impactful it's been on their lives. They're able to express themselves in ways they haven't been able to before, never thought about writing, and how it's really impressed them and made a difference. So we are looking to continue to expand there. So the Yahoo Fest I mentioned, it's at Chattanooga State. We partner with them, and it brings in 30 authors, which is from the young adult genre, the fastest growing literature genre right now. And this is a free event where 30 authors come, sign books, readings, panel discussion, all those good things. It will be September 15th through 17th. It will be virtual. We are going to do this online and do it also at the Hamilton County schools. They're going to show it in the classrooms or virtually as well. So we will be able to reach about 2,000 people, kids in the schools and during the Saturday. And the Southbound Author Lecture Series is this, brings people like Lee Smith to town, usually 4 to 6 times a year, and presents new work. You see some of the authors that have come. We have gone to virtual. So even though COVID has been going on and a lot of our things are events, we have really worked hard to be creative and continue all of these great programs in some form. And hopefully we'll even come up with some new things. So why are we bringing this to you? Well, this is the sort of our fundraiser that we're doing since we couldn't have one. And so we've raised about $7,000 so far. I hope you will consider giving as well to support these programs. We are really dependent right now on individual donors since we can't do ticket sales and the like. And that you can help us continue this impact. As Ray mentioned, we really feel that literature is just has the incomparable power to uplift and connect and inspire people, which is so needed right now. You can really understand another person's story through nonfiction and fiction. So this is some examples of what your donation can provide. One of the things we would like to do is to be able to purchase journals and provide some writing prompts that teachers will write for us and give these to children who are getting free lunches this summer. So this is just an example of what that might do. There is a link in the chat box, or you can go to southernlitalliance.org to make your donation, and it is greatly appreciated. And of course, if you make a donation of $50 or more, you can get a book that's signed by Lee, and the wine as well. So thank you so much for your support of Southern Lit and all you're doing, and hope that gives you a little more information about what we are all about. So I appreciate your time, and hope to see you again on our next author, which hopefully we'll have in August. More about that later. So thanks, Ray, for doing that.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Lee.
So we will sign off and let you know soon who else we'll have.
Okay, sounds good. Look forward to it.
Thanks so much.